The Three Apples is one of many short stories from the book 1001 Arabian Nights. There are many different versions of this book, as stories were added and left out over time. The Three Apples is one of the original stories found in Volume 1 of the book, though the author is unknown. This particular short story is told by Scheherazade around the 70th night of her imprisonment.
Scheherazade is a character in the storyteller 1001 Nights. The story goes that Scheherazade found out that one day his first wife was unfaithful to him. Therefore, he resolved to marry a new virgin each day as well as behead the previous day's wife, so that she would have no chance of being unfaithful to him. Every day, Scheherazade would have to tell a new story to stay alive till the next night.
An old fisherman can't catch any fish, so Khalif and Jafar tell him that whatever he catches next in his net in the Tigris River, they will pay him 100 dinars for it. The old man catches a chest with a dead woman in it who is cut into 19 pieces. The Khalif demanded that Jafar found the murderer, but Jafar doesn't know how. When the Jafar can't find the murderer, the Khalif threatens to hang Jafar and his 40 men. Jafar can't find the murderer, so the Khalif, true to his word, steps up the gallows to hang the Jafar and his 40 men. While waiting for Jafar to be hanged, a young man steps up and says that he killed the girl. An older man also steps up and claims he killed the woman. To prove he is really the murderer, the young man tells the Caliph the story of how the woman was murdered and what he did to the body afterwards. As it turns out, the man was married to the woman and they had 3 sons. The woman was very ill. She wanted some apples, so the husband went looking for apples, but he couldn't find any. A gardener tells him that he can find apples in the orchard of the commander of the faithful. So the husband rides off to find some apples for his wife. The husband gets 3 apples, but is away for 2 weeks. When he comes back with the apples, the wife doesn't want them anymore.
The husband visits the market after his wife refuses the apples. At the market, the husband sees a slave with one of the apples and asks him where he got it. The slave tells him he got it from his mistress. This leads the man to believe his wife is having an affair. The man turns to his wife angry and decapitates her, cuts her into 19 pieces, and puts her in the chest, and throws her in the river. After throwing his wife in the river, the man returns to his 3 sons. One son confesses he stole the wife's apples and a slave stole it. The man realizes he kills his wife for no reason. The uncle, the wife's father, weeps with his sons and husbands for 3 days. Once the Caliph hears this, he demands that Jafar finds the slave. He gives him 3 days. The Jafar cannot find the slave. Instead, he finds his daughter with an apple. When he asks her about it, she says a slave sold it to her for 2 dinars. When Jafar realizes the slave who stole the wife's apple was his own slave, causing the whole mess in the first place. When the Caliph discovers the coincidence between the incidents, the Jafar feels he will punish him for everything and starts to tell him a story.
The first setting for the Three Apples is the time period. Upon conducting research on when the 1001 Nights was written, we found that the first 480 stories were created by approximately 987 CE, and considering the Three Apples is an earlier story that takes place on day 20, it is safe to say that this story took place in the beginning portion of the Islamic Golden Age around the 9th or 10th century. The second setting for the Three Apples is where the story takes place. Within the story, the Caliph states that they reside in Baghdad. Baghdad is a city in Iraq that is located along the Tigris River, which flows north to south on the eastern portion of Iraq. The location, alongside the previously mentioned time period, gives us more insight into how and why the people behaved as they did in the story, both socially and politically.
The Caliph is the commander of the faithful. He is the civil and religious ruler of Baghdad. It is in his orchard that the husband finds the 3 apples. Throughout the story, the Caliph shows contradictory characteristics. At times, he seems caring and thoughtful, helping the fisherman and dead woman, but at others he seems cruel and uncaring, threatening to kill Jafar and his men if they cannot find the woman's murderer. Jafar has a wife and children. He is the vizier, or advisor to the Caliph, and is tasked with discovering the truth behind the whole apple incident. He is to be killed if he cannot find the true murderer. Although his life is on the line, Jafar never actively seeks any suspects, instead stumbling upon them out of sheer luck. He weeps when he thinks he will die, and readily pushes the murder affair on his own slave. The young man is married to the ill woman, and they have 3 sons. The husband cares greatly for his family. For the most part, the husband is honest and true. When the slave tells him of his mistress, the husband becomes distrustful and jealous, which briefly clouds his judgment, and he kills his wife in a moment of fury. When the sons tell him they stole the apple, he realizes his mistake, grieves, and reveals what he has done to the Caliph. The slave, who turns out to be one of Jafar's men, most closely resembles an Arabian servant. He is deceitful throughout the entire story. The slave plays a big role in the wife's death. He stole the 3rd apple from the wife's son, but leads the husband to believe he has stolen it from his mistress, the wife. The Caliph, as well as Jafar, blame the slave for the death of the woman.
The ill wife asked for one thing from her husband, an apple. The husband brought back 3 apples to show his love for his wife. The wife misplaced an apple, causing the husband to become jealous. After becoming jealous and distrustful, the husband cuts the wife into 19 pieces. In the end, the ill wife did nothing but stay faithful to her husband. The husband's distrust and the slave's deceitfulness led to the wife's death.
One symbol in the story are the 3 apples. The first 2 apples stand for love and trust, but the third stands for destiny and truth. When the third apple is stolen, it turns and becomes a symbol for evil and distrust. In literature, apples are seen as symbols of love, as well as a dangerous and forbidden fruit. In stories such as Snow White and Adam and Eve, apples are the downfall of the protagonists.
Another symbol is the number 3. It is important that throughout the story, the stolen apple is referred to as the third apple, for it has its own meaning. The number 3 is often seen as good fortune, but since the third apple was stolen, it symbolizes bad fortune. The number 3 shows up many times in the story. There are 3 sons and 3 apples. The Caliph gives Jafar 3 days to find a suspect until he hangs him.
The 3 apples includes a variety of external and internal conflicts. External conflicts include that between the Caliph and Jafar and the conflict between the man and his wife over a false affair, but internal conflicts are also prominent in the story. Each character has their own internal struggles, such as the Caliph on what to do about the dead woman, the feelings of grief the man feels about wrongfully killing his wife, and even the struggle with the man's child about telling his father he took the apple. The first theme of the 3 apples is the inevitability of death. Continually throughout the story, Jafar is confronted with the possibility of being hung by his Caliph for not finding out who killed the young woman. This leads to Jafar repeatedly having to wait till the day of his death to find someone to replace him, and also leads to a sense of repeatedly escaping death and saving his own life at the expense of others. The second theme for the 3 apples are the consequences of jumping to conclusions. Through the progression of the story, we steadily realize the unreliability of the narrator. We as readers are not given all the details regarding the murder from the beginning of the story, including who the murderer is and the possible motive. We finally learn that it all boils down to Jafar's slave and see the overall consequences of jumping to conclusions, including the death of the wife herself.